Hi, everyone. Today we're going to go through mindfulness skills around wise mind. So I'm going to ask you to grab your binders, grab handouts 3 and 3A, and we'll go ahead and get started on the states of mind, starting with wise mind. So just to orient us, here's handout 3, and the main takeaway of what we'll go through is that there's pros and cons to these different states of mind, and that the most integrated and ideal form or state of mind from which to operate is wise mind, right in the middle here. And everyone possesses it, and we will go through elements of what that looks like. So wise mind is this mindfulness practice of accessing one's inner wisdom. And when we enter this state of mind, we kind of integrate these opposite other references of reasonable mind and emotion mind. On the sheet, you have an overview of what each of these sides looks like. So let's start with reasonable mind and work our way forward. What's reasonable mind? How do we know when we're using it? Anytime that we are approaching a situation intellectually, we're not necessarily fully in reasonable mind. Reasonable mind is the extreme, where it's this intellectualization, fact, logic, to the exclusion of emotion completely. Anytime that we're using statistics, prior research, and we're relying on our prior experiences in this way that completely discounts any form of emotion or relation, then that might be a signal to us that we are in this reasonable mind place. So one sentence summary. When logic and this cause and effect reasoning are guiding your thoughts and behavior in an overarching way, you may be in reasonable mind. There's some benefits here. Reason can be pretty beneficial. Without it, we couldn't build things like bridges, homes, cities. It helps us follow instructions. We couldn't follow or solve logical problems. Most of empirical research or science is based on reasonable mind, including the scientific method. When we're running meetings, we know that there is this benefit to reason. So reason is the part of you that plans and evaluates things. It's, again, this piece, going backwards here, that helps us with analyzation, control, planning. If you are going to be organizing or learning, again, reasonable mind can be super helpful. It feels more controlled. It feels and gives a sense of focus and can feel more paced, as in, you know, the rate at which you're going. And again, can follow stepwise or logical thinking. But over time, it can feel more predictable or even boring and like it's rote or you're robotic following an algorithm, and can reduce joy. That piece over time, and the piece where we're applying reasonable mind when it's not helpful, can show us that there's problems with reason, because reasonable mind is cold and dismissive of emotions or needs or desires or passion, basically of everything that this emotion mind that we'll review encompasses. And that can often create problems in and of itself. Like, how are you supposed to make friends or maintain relationships or have a good quality relationship or interaction with your partner? So on the other hand, we have emotion mind, which is when our thoughts and behaviors are more responsive to either our energy level or our feelings or really the moment itself. When we're in emotion mind, our thinking and behavior are really just controlled by our current emotional state. It's when we have those hot, quote unquote, cognitions. where, again, reasonable or logical thinking is difficult. And it's almost when you can just have whatever you're feeling like take over and have the facts fit with the way that you're feeling in a way that like aligns with feelings in a way that benefits, I guess, just the emotion itself, right? Like you can distort facts to be congruent with the way that you're feeling in that present moment. So emotion mind also has its pros. Again, it leads itself to spontaneity, passion, creativity, and where reasonable mind fails in building connection or relation, emotion mind is amazing for empathy. It feels, though, a bit more unstable or intense or reactive. And in that way, people can feel that it's like exciting, new, or exhilarating. And really, it reflects impulses. So it does feel impulsive. Over time, when it's this erratic response pattern, that can become exhausting. It's not really predictable and can be unreliable. I think an important point here is that sometimes in our childhoods or young adulthoods, when we have made connections with people out of these erratic or tumultuous, emotionally reactive places, then we can think that that's the only place or frame of mind from which we can make those relationships, or that's how we build relation. And sometimes that feeling of exhilaration or spontaneity can be, almost addictive to some, right? So that's something to kind of be mindful of and realize there are pieces of emotion mind that are going to feel good. So when we think about this, we can also think about what would make us vulnerable to being an emotion mind. We talk about vulnerability factors across the board, and emotion mind is no different. We are more prone to go directly to this place when we are short on sleep, when we're sick, when we don't have enough food in us, when our blood sugar is super low. If you're feeling bloated, irritable, anything that you're feeling in your body can make your affect feel that much more that way. Drugs and alcohol are another piece. And anytime that we feel under a lot of stress itself, while stress can be an emotion, if the environmental demands are such that they're exceeding our resources, or if there's environmental threat, then that makes us more vulnerable to being in this place of emotion mind. So just some things to look out for. Aha, now we arrive at wise mind, which is considered an integration of both reasonable mind and emotion mind, such that it's not as if it's like a completely separate thing. Just like our first worksheet showed us, it's more of a Venn diagram where each of us has each of these elements of our brain, of the places that we go to, of ourselves, and that wise mind leverages the best pieces of both emotion mind and reasonable mind. I think of it as kind of like a synthesis, and it's like this intuition or intuitive piece to emotional experiencing and logical analysis. When we use that, it's said to be the most effective or skillful means for a few different elements, mostly for making values-based decisions, right? You need both emotion and reason, and wise mind synergizes to give you something even more than that through, as it says here, intuitive thinking and giving us this balance. Again, we each have wise mind, and it's tricky. It's not an easy thing to access. Some people might not have experienced it, or maybe we have and we didn't have this same label. Some people personalize it and call it things like kind mind or calm mind. No one is in wise mind all the time. And a few other points. Sometimes you can experience it in a particular place in your body, like some people feel as if it's like in their brain or at the center of their head. Some people feel as if it's like that feeling deep within your gut or belly that's guiding you. Um, some can find it by attending to the breath. That's something to think about. And it's not always easy to find or even be sure about it. I think that's something that we'll talk about together in terms of how do we know whether or not we're in this place? Like, what are signals and cues to us that we're operating out of a place of wise mind? And how do we differentiate that from being in emotion mind and just building a case where we are having logic fit our emotions, for instance, because they're so strong? Wise mind is that part of us that can know and experience truth. It's when you get that gut feeling and know something to be true or valid, or know something in a centered way, and is often described as intuition in that way. It's also free of conflict. Making like a wise action should feel almost effortless or far less effortful. Wise mind has a certain peace about it. I wonder if we were to take a step back and think, why would anyone say that wise mind is free of conflict or why there would be peace about it? I would suggest that as we're going through these pieces, yeah, of course, there's all these elements of wise mind, but it's really this piece of enabling your decisions to align with your values. When we make decisions that align with our values, there is a piece about it. And this values-based decision making is rooted in wise mind. So I would contend that that's probably a reason why we say that wise mind is free of conflict. And it depends on integrating these ways of knowing or states of mind. Knowing by observing, knowing by analyzing logically, knowing by your past experiences, as well as what you're experiencing in that very moment in your body, being aware of those bodily sensations. And also just knowing by your identity and what you do. What I mean by what we do is knowing by observing even our behaviors. We're being attuned to what it is that we're doing. So let's get real for a moment, because finding wise mind consistently is a practice that's built over time. It can take a lot of practice. For some people, it might be super easy, but for many, myself included, it does take this practice. Learning to find it is like an analogy that I've heard is like listening to the radio or searching for a new channel on the radio. So first you can hear a lot of static and you can't make out the lyrics and the music, but over time, if you keep tuning in or if you hit it at that right frequency, then the signal is going to get louder and you'll learn to know where the right station is. Let's say like the dial on your radio was broken, but you learn by the number of clicks that it takes. And then the lyrics become a part of you. And this protracted analogy essentially goes on to say that you can finish the lyrics immediately if someone starts singing a song that you know really, really well. But even getting to that channel to know the lyrics is a process in and of itself. So I share that to share that it can be really hard and is a practice over time. And the last part of our time together will be focused on how do we get to that place of wise mind? Like, what is this elusive, amorphous thing that we're talking about when we're saying that there's this intuition? So if you have any questions as we're going through this, or if you're really like, hey, I'm not picking up what she's throwing down, make a note to yourself and bring it up. And I think that the beautiful part about this is that we can all share our own experiences with regard to what it's like to access wise mind and what gets in the way of getting there. So make a note. On that note of making a note, I'm going to invite us to think about a couple questions that come up a lot. The hard stuff, like what are the signals that you have either within your body or you have overall? What are some ideas that you have? Um, how do we really get to the heart of telling the difference between when we're in wise mind versus emotion mind? I think that those two can be more difficult to tease apart sometimes. And again, we can like build this like mood congruent case or affect congruent case that can make it feel as if when we're reacting out of this place of strong emotion that we indeed are justified or that it is a wise mind place. So how do you know? Sometimes we know from the outcomes. I'll offer that. But I'm wondering what ideas you have about it. And then the second question, what are some times that you've experienced wise mind? And how did that feel for you? And how did you know that you were in that place? And what do you remember about it? The last, how do you get into wise mind and what are your thoughts on that? And to that point, we will go to this next set of worksheets. So we'll go through some of these experientials a bit more when we're together in group. I'm going to ask you to read through